substantial number of the recent arrivals who are seeking to enter the workforce are seeking to do so in what we call entry-level jobs, semi-skilled jobs. They're into hospitality, they're into cleaning, they're into labouring, these kind of areas, and they are competing for jobs with young people seeking, as I say, entry-level positions in the labour market. And that's showing up now in very, very high unemployment levels amongst young people in the Australian workforce, particularly in outer areas like Elizabeth in South Australia, in the western suburbs of Sydney and Melbourne. Very, very high levels of unemployment. It's also showing up in vicious conditions in hospitality industry, below award wages, people having to work under conditions that are really unacceptable. So it's a problem. We're also seeing it in a drop amongst the Australian-born workforce, a drop in participation, people simply withdrawing from the labour market because it's too difficult to find employment. Right, so that's the situation in general terms. And the question then is, why isn't the Australian government, which after all is a Labor government, why isn't it reducing the immigration program in these circumstances? Now, of course, I'm going to try and answer. Now, from a right-wing perspective, we know that this is not considered a problem, because people on the right in many cases simply say it's a good thing to have a lot more people in here crowding the labour market. It reduces the cost of labour, brings the unions into line, increases profits, and it's all good. But that's not a line that a Labor government can run, at least not publicly. What normally is said by Labor governments when you get a situation like this is, well, if we take a good look at the migration program, we see that actually these migrants are filling positions that locals can't fill because they lack the skills or are unprepared to go to Karratha. Or they argue that bringing in all these migrants is a good thing for the overall economy because they generate as many jobs as job seekers. As to the first point, which is the key one really, are these migrants actually filling jobs which can't be filled in Australia? The answer is most certainly not. And that is really clear because most of these migrants who are gaining employment in the big cities. And they're not coming here because of a targeted immigration program which picks people for jobs where there's a genuine shortage. Our migration program is really poorly targeted. The General Skill Migration Program, points tested, it does have a skilled occupation list, but it's pretty general. So jobs like occupations like accountants, doctors, nurses are on there. So it's not culling people in the labour market effectively. But what's happened increasingly is the government has pushed the selection of migrants to employers. This is happening both in the permanent entry employer nomination category and the temporary entry category, that is the 457. The emphasis is on getting employers to sponsor people. Now you might think that the rules for sponsorship would say something about whether you can sponsor a person here if the skill in question is not scarce. You might expect that there'll be some requirement for labour market test, that is to actually see whether you can get somebody locally before you bring in somebody or sponsor somebody permanently or temporarily. But that's not the case. There is no labour market testing on the permanent entry employer sponsorship category or the temporary entry 457. There has been a recent change to the legislation which I'll come to shortly. But so you cannot argue in all conscience that these migrants are carefully selected for jobs which locals are not available for. Now, if that's the case, the government must know this. Why then are they maintaining these record high migration settings? Well, one answer is that they're just slow to respond. And I think there's some merit to this, because when the Labor government came to power in late 2007, the mineral investment boom was running full bore, and there was a desperate sense of urgency within the government. We must get more people in, otherwise the unions will jack up the price of labour and it'll abort the mineral investment boom. Employers were arguing strongly they couldn't get people in the construction phase of the mineral boom. So the government put in place very liberal, what I would call full throttle settings to allow the selection and inflow of migrant workers. They've been caught by the suddenness of the downturn in mineral investment, and perhaps they're simply slow to respond. Well, yes, I think there's something to that, but unfortunately it's a little more profound than that. And this is where the story gets a bit complex, but maybe questionable, but Labour elites now are, for the most part, they see themselves as essentially globalisers. They hark back to the Hawke-Keating era in the 80s, when Labour opened up the Australian economy to the blowtorch of globalisation. They deregulated the currency, they allowed financial flows to come in here in an unregulated way. They reduced tariffs, all in an attempt to try and wake up what they thought was a sleepy economy that would never deliver rapid growth unless this blowtorch of global competition was applied to it. But they didn't stop there. They also applied the blowtorch to the working class. They removed the traditions of comparative wage justice in Australia. They moved to enterprise bargaining. They opened up recruitment to migrants for Australian and overseas enterprise on the basis of the argument that if we're going to be a truly productive, internationally competitive economy, we've got to allow organisations to recruit the skills they need. So, in other words, they applied their concerns about protectionism, that's the buzzword which I think is used to best encapsulate for both the right and our Labor modernisers what they're trying to overcome in Australia. They're trying to overcome our protectionist heritage. So these elites tend to see any reversion to restrictiveness in Australia, including restricting employers' access to migrant labourers, as part of that syndrome. They don't come out and say that explicitly, but it's there. And I think it helps explain why they've been so slow to respond to the situation I've described. Now, all this has come to a head recently over the issue of 457 visas. And I want to just finish by telling you a bit about what's happened with the 457 visa, because there's some good news there. The focus of concern about free access to overseas migrants has been via the 457 visa. And it's been led by the trade unions, particularly by the CFMEU, who represent, amongst others, mining and construction workers. They are very concerned about the 457 visa program because they, and all these other temporaries working holiday-making students and so on, because they see them as being utilised by employers to break the union's control over access to jobs in those areas and to undermine their pay and conditions. So they take